Hello, folks. Heather Agnew here, your senior yoga teacher and educator. And today we're going to talk about why our studies of anatomy and movement in yoga can be so challenging, even when it's a subject you're really interested in. And this topic comes about because I often find myself sending anatomy coursework reviews to students with a note that says something cheerful like, our movements are so complex, to try to help students to appreciate that they're not misunderstanding or not learning correctly, just that it's a lot to learn and it takes time. So today we're going to talk a little bit about why it can be an intense study subject, and then we're going to explore some strategies that we use in our yoga teacher training that might support your learning. So first, 8 reasons why anatomy can be tough to learn. Number 1, you are learning a new language. Anatomical terminology is full of Latin and Greek roots, long names, and highly specific vocabulary. So just like learning French or Spanish or Japanese, it takes time to build fluency and to connect the words you're learning with meaning. Number 2, words don't always mean what we think. You can consider terms like extension and flex. These have a technical meaning in movement science that doesn't match how we use them in everyday language. So, for example, extension in common use might mean to stretch something out. But in anatomy, it has a very precise definition about increasing the angle at a joint. So that can be confusing. Number 3, you have to experience this study in your body, not just in your head. So, unlike other subjects which might be really purely theoretical or intellectual, the study of anatomy and movement requires you to feel and do at the same time. So, to locate a muscle, to move in a particular way, and then link sensations to a word or to a concept. And that's a layered learning process. Number 4, our body is complex and yoga movements are complex. So when we look at the body, muscles overlap, joints have multiple actions, different structures work together for different movements. So, for example, it's not always clear where one muscle begins and another ends, and that can be confusing when we're trying to memorize or visualize. And if we add to this that yoga movements often combine multiple planes of movement and involve lots of different joints and muscles all in one pose, it's complex. Number 5, it challenges our habits of perception. So most people haven't been taught to notice movement with much detail. It's something we tend to take for granted. And when we're studying anatomy and movement, this asks us to pay attention to things that normally we take for granted, like how many complex joint actions might be involved in just sitting here in a chair, or standing up to walk across the room, or to bend down and pick up the cat, or even just picking up your water bottle. Next, it mixes 2D and 3D thinking. So we often study from like flat diagrams, anatomy charts, but our bodies are 3-dimensional and dynamic. And translating a picture into embodied understanding of like where a structure is and how it moves, especially in our complex yoga poses, it can feel a bit disorienting. And finally, every body is different. So variations in anatomy, in proportion or body design, in our natural flexibility or strength means that what you learn in theory doesn't always look or feel the same in practice, which adds another layer of complexity. So take a moment to think, do any of these challenges resonate with you? And if they do, can you think of ways that you can kind of harness that challenge and turn it around and support your studies moving forward? And on that note, we're going to talk about some ways to support your anatomy studies. These are some strategies that we employ in our yoga teacher training to help students, especially those new to studying anatomy and movement, to not just learn the terms and the theories, but to put them into practice in their teaching. So, number one is learn in layers and not all at once. So, instead of trying to sit down and memorize every muscle and joint, it's a good idea to just focus on one idea, like planes, movements, navigations, or explore a smaller set of structures or actions and revisit them regularly, because each layer builds on the last, kind of like zooming in gradually. Number two, try to connect what you're learning to your everyday language. So translate anatomy terms into something familiar, something you can feel. So like extension at the elbow equals straightening your arm. Flexion at the hip might equal bending forward to tie your shoes. And this can help bridge the gap between technical and common language, which can really help it to stick. Number three, using movement to anchor our learning. So I recommend to not just read about muscles, but to move them, because you don't want this learning to just float around in your brains. You want it to connect to all that you're learning about yoga. So if you're learning about your quadriceps, actually stand up, straighten your knee, feel them contract. Take a few yoga poses and think about what joints are moving, what's contracting, what's stretching. This kind of embodied learning helps with your memory and helps connect your studies to a why. Like, why am I studying this? Why do I need to remember it? It's because this will help you help your students, and that can be really motivating. Next, try to visualize in 3D to the best of your ability. And for this, you can use models, you can use apps, you can even use your own body to trace the shape of bones and muscles. Or, if you're artistic, drawing diagrams or sketching, all of these can really strengthen understanding. Um, and I do recommend, if it's affordable for you, get a small skeleton. Shops like Aldi regularly carry them. They're really inexpensive, and it can really help you visualize in 3D. Next, learn by association and through storytelling. This is a really impactful way of learning. So you could give your structures a bit of a story. So for example, your hamstrings are like brakes. They slow down and control your leg as you walk or as you bend forward. And using this kind of association or storytelling can really help make the functions easier to remember and easier to connect to our yoga poses. Next, use repetition in different forms. So it's a good idea to review the same concept in multiple ways. So read it, watch a video, say it out loud, feel it in your body, try teaching it to someone else. Each of these approaches reinforces the others. So using repetition. Next, try to pair anatomy with function and purpose. So while it can be useful for some, I'd recommend, instead of memorizing, oh, well, this muscle attaches here and here, you might ask, what does it help me do? So for example, the glutes extend the hip in locust pose, in bridge. They help us rise up from a standing forward fold. So we're really looking at, like, what does this muscle do? How does it help us? How does it show up in our yoga practice? Number, I think, 8, be patient with this new language that you're learning. I think it's useful to acknowledge that it feels foreign at first. Just like with learning any new language, a little daily exposure is more effective than cramming. So using study snacks of a few minutes a day can really make a difference. Number 9, use comparison and contrast. So it can be really helpful to compare opposing actions like flexion versus extension or agonist versus antagonist. When we see these pairs in action, it can really help concepts to click. And finally, number 10, this is really important in our yoga teacher trainings, is make it playful. You might create flashcards, you might play anatomy games. This helps take the pressure off and makes your learning a little more enjoyable. So for example, if you're studying on your own, you might take a picture of a pose and try to name all of the joint actions. What's strengthening, what's stretching. Even more fun is to get some friends together and do it all together. One person takes a pose, everyone else has to find those joint actions and name what muscles are strengthening and stretching. This is what we call strike a pose. And it's a really fun and playful way to connect your theoretical learning with the practical applications in our yoga practice. So I hope those strategies are useful for you. If some of those felt like they might work for you, you might jot them down, add them to your study practice. For now, one of the most common questions that I get in anatomy study is, what resources do I recommend? And these days, there's tons of resources out there. I do recommend the books Key Muscles or Key Poses of Yoga. These are the Ray Long books. These are very visual, so great for those who learn visually. There's also, let me just show you that book quickly. So very visual books that show you what's strengthening, what's stretching in a pose. We also have the terrific Amy Matthews and Leslie Kaminoff book, Yoga Anatomy. This is sort of a balance of image and text and can really aid your learning. We have, what else is good? Functional Anatomy of Yoga by David Keel is a really good book. And the anatomy coloring book, my copy is not useful to show you because I've pulled out and colored all the good pages, but there's also a yoga anatomy coloring book, which is really great that you can get. And also I highly recommend the Yoga Biomechanics by Jules Mitchell. So these are all useful supports to your anatomy learning. I also really recommend subscribing to some blogs, podcasts, follow folks on social media. This is a really easy way and free way to get little snacks of anatomy learning on a regular basis, put into the context of yoga, which can really help your learning. And also it keeps you updated on all the new learning that's happening in the world of movement science. And there's a lot new in that world. So I will include a list of resources in the comments or on the blog at yogatrinity.com. Let me just rattle them off to you quickly though. Follow Amy Matthews, follow the Core Kinetic blog, David Keel I've just mentioned, Greg Lehman's terrific, Jenny Rawlings, excellent, Jules Mitchell, Catherine Bruni Young of Mindful Strength, Katie Bowman, amazing, Paul Grilly, and Paul Ingraham of Pain. His website is Pain Science. Excellent deep dives into movement, posture, pain science. But again, I will pop those into the comments or into the blog with the transcript, and I hope you find those useful. For now, we'll close. Thank you so much for joining me on this discussion. I hope that I've been able to give you some ideas that can support your yoga anatomy learning, and you can move from here with some motivation and some momentum. For now, thank you for being here, and I look forward to seeing you all soon. Thanks so much.